Much welcome to the next session here on IAA Mobility. My name is Tobias Block. I'm Chief Strategy Officer of the eFuel Alliance, and I'm happy that we will have half an hour talking about eFuels. I can promise we won't talk about electric mobility. We will focus about eFuels today. So please take a seat, and thanks for paying some attention here. We will start with a short presentation from my side. I will present you the theory, so where we are with eFuels, what is the current market situation, what are eFuels, how are eFuels produced, how much eFuels will be available, and how much will it cost. And then we will move over to my colleague Daniel. He will talk more about from the practice. He's working for a Norwegian eFuel startup, so he will let you know how it is in practice to produce eFuels. First of all, I would like to do some advertisement for the eFuel Alliance. The eFuel Alliance is a quite young association, a European association. We are representing the interest of 170 companies along the whole value chain, representing or companies that want to produce eFuels. We have technology providers like Siemens Energy, Honeywell. We have interesting startups like Ineratech, like Nordic Electrofuel, like Liquid Wind, for example. Then we have, of course, fuel industry. Without fuel industry, it's getting quite complicated. So we have majors like ExxonMobil, like Repsol, like Neste, but also smaller and medium-sized fuel companies. And then we have off-takers. We have from the aviation sector, for example, Lufthansa. We have companies from the maritime sector and also companies who are present here on the IAA, like BMW, like Porsche, like automotive suppliers, like Bosch, Mahle, ZF. Our mission is to scale up eFuels. eFuels are not available yet, and this is something we would like to change. And it's only going to change if we change the political framework. eFuels are much more expensive than fossil fuels. So to have a business case, to have investments, we need to have the political support. We need to have a political framework which is incentivizing the right investments in eFuels. For that reason, we are doing lobby work. We are a lobby organization, and I'm happy to tell you later more about necessary political changes. Let's quickly start about what are eFuels. I don't know if you all know what eFuels are. Who need a recap what eFuels are? Please raise your hand. Or you're all familiar with eFuels? Then I can just skip that slide. So maybe just a short explanation. eFuels are produced, from our perspective, with renewable electricity, water, and CO2. We are splitting water and hydrogen and oxygen, and the problem with hydrogen is that we need new vehicles, that we need a totally new infrastructure to transport and store it. For that reason, we think it makes sense to synthesize hydrogen with CO2 to hydrocarbons we are well know and that we can use in the existing fleet stocks. And with that, we can use eFuels in different applications, in refineries, in pipelines, in the existing fleet stocks. We have, for example, more than 1.5 billion vehicles with an internal combustion engine worldwide. And I think we need to find solutions for them, and this market is still growing. So we think it's important that we talk about eFuels and that we bring eFuels into industrialized production. There are different ways to produce eFuels, like Fischer-Tropsch. There you have a mix of hydrocarbons, so you need to add it with the refinery route. We have the methanol synthesis. This is currently the process which most companies are following. Here, methanol can be mixed to gasoline or further converted by methanol to gasoline or methanol to diesel, or in future, unfortunately it's not certified yet, methanol to kerosene. If you want to produce gaseous fuels, you have to go the methanation route, or if you want to produce ammonia, which is in discussion as a future maritime fuel, you can take the Haber-Bosch route, which has the big advantage that you don't need a CO2 source, you just need nitrogen. One of the first questions always is, will there be enough e-fuels? And currently, no. Currently, we don't have enough e-fuels. We are in the beginning of a technology curve. But there are a lot of studies showing that the theoretical potential is huge. So, for example, the Fraunhofer Institute had looked at different production places outside of Europe, and they included a lot of sustainability criteria, also human rights issues, and they found out that there is a potential of up to 88,000 terawatt hours. Just as a comparison, the total energy demand of the transportation sector globally is about 33,000 terawatt hours. And of course, we will electrify a lot. It's not e-fuels against electrification, it's e-fuels and electrification. Together with Porsche Consulting, we have done a large study about the e-fuel projects that has been announced. In our database, we currently have 300 e-fuel projects with a theoretical capacity, if all of this would be realized, of 20 billion liter gasoline equivalent production of e-fuels in 2030, which is quite a growth. What you can see on the map is that we have 3 different focus areas. We have the US. This was, I have to say, was due to the Inflation Reduction Act with great incentives for green hydrogen. A lot of projects have been announced here. Some projects will be realized. For example, our member Infineon will realize some projects there, or HIF Global. But due to the cut of the subsidies, this probably will not prolong. Then we have China, and I really have to say that China is really putting a lot of money and power in the e-fuel industry. We see a lot of announcements. For example, the Danish ship company Maersk announced a joint production with Goldwind. So large projects are currently being realized in China, and they also promise to be in line with all sustainability criteria for the production of e-fuels, so using green electricity and stuff like that. In Europe, we see a lot of projects as well, but smaller projects due to electricity prices and not that available CO2 sources. When we look at different companies, we have one large company, HIF Global, which have announced a lot. But then you see on position 2, 3, 4, 5, we already have Chinese companies. So they really see a large industrial potential, and I think they are doing the same what they have done for photovoltaic and batteries. They really are investing here already in that early market phase. As already said, most projects are following the methanol route, but we will later hear an example following the Fischer-Tropsch route as well. In total, if all these projects would be realized, we would have a factor of 10 in increasing the production capacity from 2025 to 2030, and also the revenue and the required investments will be produced a lot. Unfortunately, not all of these projects will be realized in the end, which I will show you in the next slide. Just a comparison, the projects we have in the database and the potential technical scale-up of e-fuel production could reach a level of up to 160 billion liters in 2040. This is what the experts from Porsche Consulting are saying. If we now scale up the manufacturing of electrolyzers of synthesis reactors, what is the maximum which can be produced? In green, on the lower side of this chart, you see what the EU is planning in the Climate Target 2040 impact assessment. And on the red dotted line above, you see the fuel consumption, which is predicted in Europe until 2050. So, of course, we can not fill the whole gap, but there are other technologies available as well, like biofuels, and electrification is already considered here. So the message of this chart is eFuels could do more than the EU sees the potential at the moment. And we have a slower electrification than many have expected. And if we want to reach climate targets, I think we have to expand the use of eFuels in future. If not, vehicles will continue to drive with fossil fuels. As said, not all of these projects will be realized. Just 6% of these 300 projects we have in the database have a final investment decision now. So they are ready to go. They have the money. They can start construction. Most of the projects right now are in a phase where they are looking for offtake agreements, because you need offtake agreements for a certain duration and the volume to get your loans, your capital from the banks in the end. We can increase this number, but therefore we need to talk about the political framework. What are eFuels? What are the costs for eFuels? Right now, as mentioned, we are in a pre-industrial phase. So right now, eFuels are produced in labs and pilot plants, and that's of course expensive. It's like, if you like to compare it with the first photovoltaic module or with the first windmill. We need to do three things. We need to scale up. So you can already see if we scale the production from 10 kiloton e-methanol to 500 kiloton e-methanol, we can reduce by €4 per liter. If we then change the location, if we go from Germany with high electricity costs to South America, for example, we can reduce by another €1 per liter. And then there are also technical improvements possible, which can reduce the total production cost in future to €1.2 per liter, which is not as cheap as fossil fuels, so climate protection will cost money, and we will need regulation to cover the gap to fossil fuels, but it will get a lot cheaper than we are right now. My last topic before I hand over to Daniel is the regulation. The regulations are clearly hindering a market ramp up at the moment. And we have identified three market challenges, which I would like to elaborate to you. First of all, the quotas that we have for the European fuel industry are much too low. We just have quotas for 2030, which are about 1%. So 1% of the fuel consumption in Europe in 2030 need to be e-fuels, but there's a double counting in. So in reality, it's 0.5%, which is a quite homeopathic amount. And we have not a long-term perspective. We don't have quotas beyond 2030. We have additional quotas in the ReFuelEU Aviation and in the FuelEU Maritime for the aviation and maritime industry, which goes until 2050, which is good. But for the whole fuel sector, for the whole transportation market, the quotas are ending in 2030. Nevertheless, in the national implementation, we already see that some member states are implementing these quotas more ambitious. Finland, for example, goes to 4% e-fuels in 2030 just for the road. In Germany, 1.5% would be are proposed, which are already more than 1 billion liter. In Spain, 2%, for example. And as eFuel Alliance, we are lobbying for higher quotas to replace fossil fuels as fast as possible. The second challenge we have is restrictive production rules, and I'm sure maybe Daniel will talk more about that. If you want to produce green hydrogen for European regulation, you have to demonstrate that the power comes from additional installations which are not older than 36 months. You need to prove a temporal and geographical correlation. Industrial CO2 point sources are only allowed until 2040, and each of these restrictions are increasing the production price. And it's good that we have these rules, but in the beginning they are way too strict. We should start more pragmatic, and if we have a matured market, then we can phase in these rules. But in the beginning, it makes it much more expensive. There's a letter from the former economic minister, Robert Habeck, saying that alone the electricity criteria are increasing the production cost by €2.4 per kilogram of green hydrogen. The third topic I would like to discuss, and that's why we are also here on an automotive fair, is the exclusion of the road sector. As you all know, we have the CO2 emission standards in Europe with a minus 100% in 2035, which is a de facto ban of the internal combustion engine. So in a long-term perspective, there's no use for e-fuels in Europe. And we think that this is wrong. We think this decision shall be made by the customer, by the market in the end. If people want to drive electric, fine. But if they are waiting, if they are hesitating to switch, if they want to keep a range extender or a plug-in hybrid, we need to provide solution, and therefore the regulation has to change. Currently, the regulation is just measuring at the exhaust pipe, which means all electric vehicles have 0 gram per kilometer. Doesn't matter where the electricity comes from, doesn't matter where the battery is produced. And we want to include renewable fuels, and we can do it by different ways, via a carbon correction factor, crediting system, or via a new vehicle class for CO2 neutral fuels. And I'm happy to talk more about this later in our Q&A session if we have time for that. And now I'm handing over to Daniel, and please start the second presentation. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you, Tobias. Yes. We have talked about the market potential now, the market potential and the technology potential of e-fuels in theory. So what do we see in practice? I can actually confirm that, especially in the last 6 months, actually in the last year, we have seen a change in demand. So if you go back 1 or 2 years, the request for can I buy e-fuels was more like, okay, what is the cheapest price available? Now, when we received requests for e-fuel today, is more like, okay, how can you assure that you are able to deliver in 2030? And then the second question is, and what is your price? So we moved from a market screening or fishing for information to a more like real tenders or requests for quotations. Yeah, that's what we see in the market. And yes, my name is Daniel Böhner. I'm the manager for sustainability and also for policy from the Nordic Electrofuel. We're based in Norway, in Oslo, and we will produce clean renewable fuels from renewable power, mostly in Norway, but also from all other parts in the world. The technology we use is highly scalable and will also allow a fast ramp-up after the first plant. And we're based in Europe with part of our plants, which becomes more and more a competitive advantage, which we did not see coming in the beginning, but that's just what we see in the market now. Okay, so what exactly do we work on, and how do we plan to do that? So this is the mission statement for our first plant, for the first industrial plant. So what we develop in Norway is a plant that will produce about 10 million liter. It is focusing on the aviation sector because that is where we see most of the demand in the beginning, because the regulation, as Tobias said, the regulation in the aviation sector is crystal clear for e-fuels, outlining a clear demand and giving you a really high penalty if you're not able to deliver on that demand, while in other sectors like automotive, it's not there yet. Important is also that for the first plant, the focus is on aviation, but it's important to know that we will produce more than just aviation fuel. So if you build a Fischer-Tropsch plant, you will always have other products being produced in that plant, like naphtha, like waxes, and these waxes can be very interesting also for the automotive industry to reduce the Scope 1 emissions. So for example, if you use the waxes to produce lubricants, or if you use the naphtha to produce clean gasoline to fill the first fill in the production process before you deliver a car. Yes. A bit more in detail. So what does the first plant look like? So it will be based in this industrial area in Norway. It's called Herøya Industrial Park. It's the biggest industrial park, or the oldest industrial park in Norway, not the biggest anymore, but one of the biggest ones. You see there's a lot of industry, a lot of chemical industry around us, and the plant will have a capacity of about 10 million liters. We have all the permits that we need to build that plant. We have an offtake secured for that plant for 10 years for all the products. Very important also for us, we have secured a grant of 40 million euros from the European Commission, from the EU Innovation Fund. And that's most of the ingredients you need to realize a plant, actually. Yeah, it's important to highlight that we're an engineering company. So what you will see also in our presentations and in a lot of our projects is that we focus on reliability and to be able to be predictable and to deliver on promises, and not because Tobias showed overview on announced projects. You will not see us in this overview because we have not announced all of our projects, because that's we have a bit of a different strategy compared to some of our other companies there. Okay, so this is what we do in Norway. Why do we go to Norway? So this is why we consider Norway as a really good launchpad for starting this. Norway has very, very favorable conditions. For example, what Tobias already mentioned is that which electricity are you allowed to source? So Norway has very simplified framework because Norway is basically 100% renewable already today. We see a very good industrial base there, so we see that if you go for permits, the permitting procedures are very predictable. It's not easier than in other parts of the world, but at least it's predictable. We also have a very favorable condition there regarding the electricity grid. So Norway has, compared to a lot of other countries in Europe, has a really, really stable and well-built grid. Okay, and the expansion. So how do we plan to scale that after the pilot plant? So it's important to know that the most mature projects we have at the moment is in Norway. It's not just this one. So we have several projects in Norway which we are actively working on. So the expansion will be mostly in Norway in the beginning, also for strategic reasons. But we also have other projects in the world in what we call sweet spots for eFuel production. So if you go to our website, you will see an announcement that we have signed an agreement, for example, in Saudi Arabia. We have a partnership in Oman with Hydrom, which is the state entity for hydrogen projects in Oman. And we have some other projects. So the plan is there to scale that. The strategy, like I said, is always to focus on reliability rather than on a really fast but unrealistic ramp up. And we are still convinced that this is the right strategy. We have some well-known partners which support us in this strategy. One of the most important achievements of our company is the first one is getting the EU Innovation Fund for the pilot plant. So we got a grant of 40 million euro. Which is nice to have, of course, but is also really a testimony for the project and for the project team, because the truth is also that in the last 3 years we have been the only ESAF project mature enough to get the EU Innovation Fund. So the criteria for that is really, really hard. That's why we are super proud that we got that. We've been awarded as one of Europe's top 50 clean startups, and we are also awarded from the EIC Scaling Cup, so that is funded by the European Commission, as one of only 12 clean fuels and hydrogen scale-ups with unicorn potentials. So if we have any investors in the room, happy to have a chat afterwards. That's basically what we do. If you want to contribute to that, to sum up the presentation, yes, the market is there. The market has been a bit slow, but we really see a change in the demand at the moment from aviation, from maritime, also partly from automotive. So if you're interested in this opportunity and looking for a partnership, we're looking for technology partners, we're looking for off-takers, but also for strategic investors. So yes, happy to connect with you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. Please have a seat. And we would like to start a Q&A session. So maybe you have questions. We have a microphone over there. If if you're shy and if you don't have questions, then I will ask my questions. Oh, please. Yeah.
Hi, thank you. Interesting and learned a lot, thank you. I'm thinking about the use case for the road transportation, ideally in a scenario which goes even beyond 2035. Or is it more like that would be delivered as 100% eFuels, or it would be more like in combination, a mixture, I don't know, 70-30, 80-20 with conventional traditional fossil fuels?
So I think our long-term perspective, our target scenario in 2050 should be to avoid the use of fossil fuels completely. In 2035, it maybe could still be possible that in the mix that there are fossil fuels. And we also have biofuels, advanced biofuels, which are, from my perspective, okay. And if they are produced in a sustainable way, they could maybe have a share. There are different studies around of 10-15%. So there's a competition, of course, also to eFuels, but clear message that we should avoid fossil fuels as fast as possible.
Thank you.
There's one question. Yeah, thanks.
Hi, thank you. Thank you very much for the very interesting facts. I was just wondering, when it comes to striking the right balance between the different transport modes, meaning we know that there are certain transport modes, specifically maritime that you mentioned, the aviation one that you mentioned, which are going to require massive quantity of sustainable and advanced fuels. We know that there are certain targets, we know we need to produce them, and it's only now starting to pick up. And your experience is a wonderful experience of that. How do we ensure then that enough sustainable fuels are produced for that, and then there is even an excess or a surplus that can go into the road transport sector? Isn't it too big of a challenge, or in a nutshell, what is your take on that one? Thank you so much.
You want to start?
You go ahead.
Okay, that's what I tried to show with the one slide about the technical potential, how fast we could scale up the e-fuel production. Because you have seen what the EU is planning to use e-fuels for. It's basically aviation and maritime. The EU scenarios are quite clear here that we will gonna have a full electrification in the road sector. And technically it could be possible to produce e-fuels. In aviation and maritime, we have two sectors which have a strong international competition. So if you fly to Shanghai, for example, you don't have to step over and use hubs like Frankfurt or Munich. You can also go to hubs outside of Europe. And then avoid that you have to be compliant with the regulations within the European Union. So airlines often have a low margin at the right now, and fuel cost matters a lot for them. For average ticket prices, fuel costs are about 60-70%. So it's really difficult, I think, to scale up a quite expensive technologies in sectors which will need them for sure, as you said, but don't have the affordability at the moment. And if I have, in addition, companies like Porsche investing in HIF Global, for example, and then customers who can afford the high prices in the beginning, I don't think it's wrong to use it to scale up the technology as fast as possible. A second argument is, and maybe you can elaborate on that you always have byproducts, especially if you use conventional refineries.
Yeah. So I mean, in the end of the day, it's possible to increase the yield of a certain product as much as you want, but that also increases the cost for this product, obviously, and that is in that case usually it's the aviation industry. So the aviation industry is a bit in a difficult situation because at the one hand they have the mandates, they have the penalties, so they want to be sure that every drop we produce goes to aviation industry. At the same time, they need to finance that ramp up, because what you've seen and also in Tobias' presentation is that, okay, the first volumes are more expensive because of technology risk. Not really because of the technology itself, it's more of perceived risk by investors. It will decrease. So at the other hand, the aviation industry would somehow be happy to say, okay, let's share that initial burden somehow. The inconvenient truth is maybe also that this is a discussion we should have had 10 years ago regarding the climate targets, but we're a little bit too late in all sectors, not just eFuels, also in electrification, we're just 10 years too late. And I don't think we have the luxury anymore to discuss about that. So every liter of product I give to a refinery is replacing 1 liter of fossil product. And in the end of the day, from the climate perspective, there's no real new change.
So we have 12 seconds left. I would use it for a last question, Daniel.
Yes.
What is the key challenge you're facing right now? What is your key wish for politicians? What needs to be changed?
Yeah, the challenge is really that the framework at the moment is too complex, is difficult to understand, is somehow unpredictable, and that is also a challenge we see in building the plants, in getting the investors, because we have investors which come back to us and say, look, we really try to understand the framework and the business case. We believe in the market, but we are unable to understand the framework, and therefore we have a challenge in going to the investment committee. And it's meant in a good manner if you read the regulation, but it's not something you can actually start an industry. So it is something that you can use if an industry is running already to perfectionize it, but it doesn't enable a ramp up or makes it unnecessarily expensive, and that is the key challenge at the moment. That's why eFuels are so expensive.
Thanks a lot, Daniel. Thanks for your attention. Half an hour, we haven't got more, but we are here for your questions. So if you have questions, just come to us. Yeah, thanks a lot. It's also being recorded and will be online later. Have a nice day.
Thank you.